All righty, go ahead.
Okay, so this is my last deployment again. This was 1988, and I ended up, the ship ended up going into the Persian Gulf, and that's where we really stayed underway. Like, we were underway for a long time there, and it's hot, dusty. Um, it's hot like Arizona, hot summer hot. So, and then being in the engine room, we didn't have air conditioning apparently because I don't think they could make a unit to cool that space, but it wasn't it wasn't it wasn't that unbearable. And in fact, if you look at the pictures in World War II where the guys were on the ships and they're bare chested and they're wearing their dungaree pants and sometimes shorts, they let us wear like just the white t-shirts and our pants, so we didn't have to wear our dungaree shirts. We didn't have to wear a full uniform, so that was pretty nice. But I did see a lot of commercial ships that were hit with bombs and missiles. They were in the dry docks and all that in Bahrain and Saudi Arabia. And then we also ended up, another ship found it, but there was this big, huge storm. And it doesn't storm much in the Persian Gulf, but it got really bad. I mean, waves were high, and, you know, I don't know what the sea state was, but it was pretty rough for a day. And apparently, the I forget the name of the other ship, but they found a floating bog hammer speedboat that the Iranians were using with nobody in it. So
Hmm.
they were towing it, and then we ended up towing it for a while. And from the last I heard, I think it's in Virginia somewhere. It's in a museum or something. They kept it. It's like a war prize. But we
No,
weren't
no,
really
no idea what
clumsy.
happened to the people in it, or
Oh yeah, they're Iranian. I don't know. We think they abandoned it. We never tried to start it or anything, but it probably had engine problems. Or it was a small boat. It was like 30 feet open. They had a double 23 millimeter. Uh, it's the anti-aircraft guns that they put on the armored vehicles. They had those welded on the boat, and it looked like a tractor seat. And then they had a guy in the back. There
hmm.
was a there was a Type 56 Chinese um, a rifle in there. There was some odds and ends, and I also heard this was a. I still don't know, the truth of this, but somebody said they found a launch tube from a Stinger missile in
Uh,
there. Not it wasn't any armed or anything, but they found parts or pieces from a Stinger missile, and the U.S. had been sending hundreds, if not thousands, of Stinger missiles to Afghanistan. And I've read years ago, I read that some of them did make it to Iran and other places, but that's neither here nor there. That's all kind of speculation. They had civilians fly on and inspect everything, and they took whatever they took. They flew off in a helicopter. They didn't leave it out for us to look at. You know how it is. People show up, you don't know who they are. Like, who are these guys?
yeah.
We're underway. We know everybody, and all of a sudden there's a couple civilians walking around. You're like, what the heck's going on? So they were pretty hush hush about all that. The other thing that was interesting is I don't know if you've seen Black Hawk Down. I'm sure you
Yep.
have.
Yes.
They they had the little birds in there, right? They talk about the little birds and the guys flying on the seats on the side, the Delta operators and the special forces.
Hmm.
Well, we had those helos. They had two of those helos, not with the benches, but with miniguns and rockets on the ship. And at midnight, well, not at midnight, at when it got dark out, they would take off. So we had our assigned helicopter with us, and we would launch that around 6, 7 o'clock at night. That would take off, and then when it got dark, we'd go up for flight quarters. And these helos, we'd help push them out. There were two small helicopters. They're all loaded, and it was the 160th SOAR, which is the Special Operations Group. They're the ones that fly in the Navy SEALs and all that. This was their first time using that group out there, but they would go they would fly tandem, and they would fly around ships trying to find the Iranians or whatever doing nefarious things like dropping mines or shooting other ships, and they would tear it up for them. So, but we did that for a couple weeks, and it was always funny. It was always funny. Like, they flew on the night before, and they went around the ship, said, "You guys can't write about them. You can't tell anybody." But who are we going to tell? This is the 80s. We didn't have internet. We didn't have email. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have satellite phones. So we didn't know anything. So they flew on, and then the next day we had CNN on the ship for a week. And I'm like, yeah, they're setting us up. They want to catch them doing something. So it's kind of how it is. Like, if you can catch the Iranians doing something, yeah, the news hits the CNN. That was back when CNN would actually, be newsworthy, and so it was kind of cool, kind of felt like the ship was a celebrity, not so much us, but the ship. So, and then this is '88. I came back into port, and I ended up not re-enlisting, but I extended, and I picked duty orders to go for one more year up to Long Beach, work at the SIMA, which was the Shore Intermediate Maintenance Activity. And what we did was we worked on the gas turbines on the other ships, because by that time a lot of the frigates had been commissioned, and they needed guys to work on them that had been underway. And
They were
so
gas
we would pull
turbines?
engines. Oh yeah.
Really?
Jet engines, basically DC-10 engines on the ship. So how it works is our ship had two engines, and they were side by side, and then they went through reduction gear. So it was 20-1. So when the gas turbines are running, like idling was around 6,000 RPM. The reduction gear, you could run it, and then you had a controllable pitch propeller. So it was all automated through and this is early stuff, but it was all automated through like a single lever. And then when the ship got up to speed and everything tested, then we could send it up to the pilot house, up to where the captain and the XO are, and then they could steer the ship and run the engines. It was pretty amazing what they had back then for technology.
So you worked right there in Long Beach for a year then?
Yeah, I worked there for a year, and then I got out in the end of '89. That's when I got out. So I did like 7 years in the Navy, and
You were single the whole time?
In the National Guard. I did get married, but it didn't last very long because, getting underway and being away from people when you're young, and usually those marriages don't last. The first deployment I was on, we had like a 60% divorce rate on the ship. So.
Oh, wow.
I ended up not staying married much longer after that. So.
But you guys are gone a long time. You guys were out for a long time.
Yeah, 6 months. They're doing longer deployments now, but 6 months was a standard deployment. And the frequency was higher then. So I did 3 deployments in 5 years, where I met a lot of guys that maybe did 2 or 3 deployments a whole 20 years. So. And I kind of burned out because the Navy really pushes you to work hard, and I would work hard, and they wouldn't we got to keep working, and it kind of takes a toll on you. Like, I didn't realize this, but being in the Air Force, the Army, or the Marines, you could at least, you'd be in the field for 30 days, and then you come back, you'd have your barracks, you could go home, you could do this, but at the end of the day on a Navy ship, you have to, you're underway. You can't go eat a pizza or anything. You're kind of like stuck there. So,
right.
I remember telling people, "What's it like?" And I said, "It's like being in prison when you're underway, except we can sink." So it wasn't. That's not 100% true, but it was kind of like I felt a few times that I was getting robbed, but it was a really good experience.
Yeah.
You end up pushing yourself, learning a lot. Got to see a lot of places. Every deployment, you got to see different places, so it was always nice.
So,
I was proud of what I did. So,
as you should be. So what'd you do when you got out?
so when I got out, I um, started looking for jobs. I wanted to become. I'm like, hey, I know all about gas turbines, but those jobs are far and few between. So I applied for a job to do environmental work, which is like hazmat cleanup. And because I had the experience being a firefighter in the Navy and working in confined spaces, that job, they accepted me right away. They like, oh, we love you. We'd love you to have you. And um, part of the work we did was we broke down drug labs. So I did a lot of drug lab, like Breaking Bad. We'd go in and we tear the lab apart, pack it all up, send it back to get all the chemicals destructed. The drugs they would take, the money they would take, we ended up with all the trash and the chemicals. So, and I did that for starting in 1990, and I left that company in 91, and I went to work at Solar Turbines in San Diego, which was Caterpillar, and I worked there for about 3 years. But
Finally got into heavy equipment, huh?
Well, no, so Solar Turbines makes gas turbines here in San Diego, and they're big. It's Caterpillar. They make turbines, so they do generator sets. They do natural gas pipelines, kind of like the Viking transmission line that's there in Minnesota.
Yep.
So they made the boost compressors, and they made all the turbines for that. They made power plants for the Social Security. They made power plants for the White House. This stuff's everywhere. So a lot of it's oil production and all that. But I ended up leaving. I went back to the environmental company, and I finished out another 6 years there. And then after that, in the 99, I got my contractor's license, my general contractor's license. And I started a company with my brother, Lyle, who you interviewed. I don't know if he told you this,
yep.
But
yes, he did.
He did that about 11 years. And in that time, at the end of it, it was after the Great Recession. We lost a lot of contracts, and it got really hard to just earn money like it was. It was tough because people couldn't get loans. They couldn't get, you couldn't get a credit card back then. You had to have a steady job. So we both started working for other places, and Lyle went to work as a welding instructor for the Navy as a contractor, and then I left, and I ended up going to work on the Navy bases as a treatment plant operator. So I was working here in San Diego for 15 years. Started as a maintenance mechanic, and then became a plant operator, and then I eventually became a facility manager of Naval Base San Diego, which is the largest base in the West Coast, and then also Point Loma. So I did the submarines and the Navy ships. We would service the ships as far as taking their bilge water, their oily waste, and we'd process it, and we'd recycle the oil, fuel, and then we would treat it, the water, and then send that to the sewer. And doing my part again to be. This was the combination of environmental and the Navy, and I was able to combine the two and do quite well.
So getting up,
it was a good job.
What you learned in the Navy, you were able to take on to your next.
Oh yeah,
next part of your life.
The Navy, and it wasn't even the Navy schools were that good. It was just being out there in the middle of the ocean. Something breaks, you got to learn how to fix it, get it running, because you get everybody staring at you. You turn around and there'd be your chief, there'd be the officer, there'd be the engineering officer, there'd be the XO and the CO. So you had a lot of pressure to get things running. So,
right.
Yeah, the military did good by me. I just recently applied for and got. I have a disability rating 10% service connected. So,
congratulations.
Well, it's a battle, but better late than never, right?
Right.
So I'm planning to put in for some more, but I still, like, I live in San Diego, so, my neighbor might be a guy that's the master chief of the ship. It was the other day I met somebody down the street. He was a E9 in charge of one of the ships, and they're just, that's what's nice about it. I'm in a Navy town, so I can, I understand, I know the lingo, and I know all that. I've been there. And it's worked out really well, so.
Oh, good. What's probably the best part of the Navy? What was the best part of the Navy for you?
It was actually, the best part was when we'd get underway. When we'd get underway, it was like, okay, even though you're not where you can't leave and go drink a beer and go relax, when you get underway, it was like you were, okay, now we're underway. Nobody's going to mess with us for hair standards. We're not going to do uniform inspections. We can't work on the equipment. The equipment's got to run because we're underway. We don't have like scheduled maintenance. No, so we would just clean on a watch and just take our time and enjoy the view, because there's nothing better than being out on the fantail and watch the sunsets and stuff at night. It was very peaceful and relaxing. And then you'd pull in and you'd meet people from different countries, and what can I say? I was a young sailor, and you'd end up with women. It was kind of crazy times on that, but yeah. So it was a lot of fun.
Young and dumb, but having
Young
fun.
And dumb. Yeah, having fun. Sometimes too much, but no. I mean, I was able to go up to Canada. That was cool. I went up there a bunch of times. We went to Canada, and this is really cool. Is they don't really talk about these things, but there's a place up in Canada, up on Vancouver Island, and they've got a torpedo range. And what they do at these torpedo ranges is they'll take a Navy ship like the one I'm on, and it's in a bay, but it's kind of like a fjord in Norway, not with the steep mountains, but it's just kind of a real deep and kind of wide, but a long inlet. And we would go back and forth all day, starting around 9 to about 3. And they had unmanned submarines that they control, and they would shoot torpedoes towards the ship. And the thing is the torpedoes were training. They were trying to design and build these torpedoes. And what they did was they made them go underneath the ship like 20 feet under. So you'd be in the engineering space and you'd hear the torpedo go by, and it would like raise the hair on your neck.
Really?
They would come by. Yeah, it was kind of crazy because you hear this buzzing. You're like, what is that? And all of a sudden it just like the Doppler effect. You'd hear it coming and then you'd hear it leaving. And then what they would do is, the way the torpedo training is after the torpedo, they pop a airbag, and then it comes to the surface, and they retrieve them, and then they rebuild them and like see what's wrong and see what's right. So, and then of course there's no dock to tie up to, so we'd anchor, and then they would run us on to shore. They had a bus take us to town, and then of course in Canada, I don't know if you've been to Canada, but people like to party up there. And who doesn't like American sailors with pockets full of money? So we would end up going around and party all night, and then like at a certain time they wouldn't bring you out to the ship, so we would just stay drinking, and then we like try crash somewhere, and then they'd pick us up in the morning, take us back to the boat, eat chow, and then do it all over again. If you had duty, you had to stay on the boat, which was like every third or fourth day. But if you didn't, you could go out at night.
Yeah.
Just meet people. Canadians are cool. They're a little odd, but they're cool. I mean, they like to drink. The exchange rate was nice. Like Australia, it's like 70 cents a dollar. So for $1 American, you get like $1.35, $1.40 Canadian or Australian. It's pretty much, I think it's right now it's kind of 50-50, but it was nice to turn in money and then you end up with more money. So it was but yeah, young. I wasn't tied down. I got married the last year, but that didn't work out. Didn't have any kids, didn't have anything, didn't have any responsibilities. And then when I'd leave, I'd park my car on base, or I'd put it in storage on pay like $30 a month, and they would make sure it wasn't getting damaged. It's kind of how it was back then.
Yeah. So it sounds like you've had a good Navy career there, Tim.
Yeah, got to see some stuff. You know, didn't get shot at, but got to see a bunch of people that were shot up, and
That's a good
you
thing.
know, yeah, that's a good thing. You know, I wasn't able to go to Vietnam, but you know, we kind of had our own. Actually, we were off the coast of Vietnam,
If you're
and we
South
caused,
China Sea, yeah.
yeah, we were caused an incident one time because the captain got too close to one of the islands. This is in the '80s, so they were all like, "Oh, everybody's freaking out because the captain went too close." Now they filed that, you know, they call somebody in Washington, and then the shit would roll downhill, and they're like, "What's going on?" You know, we don't know. You know, I didn't know. I was in the engine room. A lot of times we just stay in the engine room or go to berthing. There was weeks I don't even think I went outside sometimes. Just you get so burned out on everything. You're up all the time. You're fixing stuff. You stink. You smell. You can't shower every day because we made our own water. You know, so if they had a problem with the water plant, then nobody could shower.
Yeah.
But they'd make sure the cooks would shower because nobody wants a nasty cook making your food. So
Yeah.
the corpsmen and the cooks always got water because those guys you don't want smelling and stuff. We didn't really care. We were covered in diesel fuel and lube oil and hydraulic fluid anyway. So, but it was good, and I did take all the training. Even the infantry school was good because you'd get young guys, new guys on there. They'd be bitching. You'd be like, you know what? Just shut up. You're just making it hard on the rest of us. We can't do anything about it. You're just complaining. It's obvious that we're screwed, but you just got to like buck up and take it. I'm not going to sit here and cry about it. It just makes it worse.
Yeah, you only carry them so far.
And
Then
you
they
had to
can
eat K
then they can
rations.
recycle. Yeah.
Yeah, but you had to eat K rations, so you know it's like
Well,
don't complain about it.
that was kind of a treat. We had them squirreled away just for like something in the evenings to have to eat. So yeah.
But I feel one of the things about Marshall County that I feel really fortunate is there's a lot of veterans that came out World War One, World War Two, Korea, Vietnam. A lot of guys that went before us that did great things. I don't know if you know some of the stories, but Ken Nelson, who had the Ken Nelson Agency for years. I don't know if you remember him.
Yep.
Yeah, he was a hero of Iwo Jima. A lot of people don't know that. He got a Silver Star there, and there's a book actually dedicated to him about that battle. And then Dr. Rolson, I don't know if you remember him, the dentist. He was my
Yes,
dentist.
he worked on my teeth. Yep.
Yeah. So he was. Now you know his story, right?
No,
Oh, you don't?
I was
Oh,
just a
man.
young kid when I went to him.
He's mentioned in two books because he was the second tank that broke through Bastogne in the Battle of the Bulge,
Really?
and they reference him by name. And also he's in the book about the Battle of the Bulge, and the second book he's in is when Patton sent this group of guys to go rescue in a prisoner of war camp his son-in-law, and they got captured, and he was a POW for a while.
Really? No, I didn't know
You
that.
wouldn't imagine it. Yeah. And then I've also found, actually kind of related to him, he just got the award a while back from the Warren, the Alumni Association for the school. It was John Sands. John Sands served in World War One, and he was married to one of my grandmother's cousins, and he worked for he was at the actual Pancho Villa when they had the expedition to chase Pancho Villa
That's
back
a
in
while
like
ago.
1905. Yeah, And then he came back after that, went to Fort Snelling for like 6 months and became an officer. And then World War I started. He was overseas, and his CO was Teddy Roosevelt Jr. And when the war ended, and I've got documentation I should send you guys, but he was part of the whole list of people that started the American Legion. So he was his CO, Teddy Roosevelt, didn't want to be in charge of it, but
That'd be
but he was
1918.
there. Yeah. And then I also found another guy up in Canada, no, up in Alaska, in Anchorage. There's a American Legion Post Number 1. It's called the Jack Henry. And Jack Henry was a resident of Angus, Minnesota. He was a farm boy. He was older, but he died. And for some reason, the guys up there in 1919 named their VFW or American Legion post after him. And I've contacted them up there, and they don't even know why it's named to Jack Henry. But I have the grave. I have all this information. I've been trying to get to him. Eventually, I will. So I was going to make a shadow box and send it up there with all his stuff and his picture. I found his picture and stuff. So I do a lot of history digging. So
Tim, I'm just about out of battery here, so we're going to have to cut this out. I want to thank you for doing this interview, and thank you for your service.
Well, thank you for your service, and thank you for spending your time on Sundays to record goofheads like me. So, but we'll stay in touch.
You're number 152.
All right. Well, I'll see you, and I'll look forward